Welcome to the course Digital Transformation and Technological Innovation. So, we are into our third module, that is transitions in software markets. So, we are talking about in the last session SaaS and IaaS and PaaS and why firms will go for that, what are the top cloud vendors they are offering, and that comparison and understanding that we developed in the last session. So, let us continue this module further, and next question that we want to address is how much does it cost per month to run a website. So, let us say you are a startup, you want to run your own business, you want to run your own website, then what are the things that you need to look at in terms of cost, right. So, how much does it cost per month to run a website. So, one important criteria, one important factor to make this decision is that we need to look at what are the monthly page views that we are expecting from our website. So, we need to make an estimate for that, how you will grow. Obviously, it is difficult to estimate early on, but this particular question, the costing is actually it depends on this, right. So, monthly page views and data transfer that you might expect. So, that is an important element here. Then let us say we, for an example in this session, we take 5 million views, and let us say we plan for 5 million views, and this is also considered sweet spot that might be manageable with a top tier cloud setup. That means you do not have to go for very expensive enterprise tier cloud setup and manage a top tier one, and you can achieve 5 million views. You can support rather 5 million views for your website. So, this is what we are referring as a sweet spot, right. So, let us take that, let us anything below this obviously can be better managed by the same setup, same cloud setup, right. So, therefore, it is better to take this kind of number 5 million views, right. So, if we say 5 million views then essentially if we assume that average page size is 2 MB, right. So, whatever the pages that you are that you plan to have for your website. So, if the average page size is let us say 2 MB, then roughly 10 TB data transfer might happen with 5 million page views. So, simply 5 million multiplied by 2 MB, and what you get is 10 TB, right. So, 10 TB data transfer that is the amount of data that will get transferred, and because many of the cloud providers, they will be charging for data transfer also. So, therefore, this number becomes important in your cost calculations, right. So, here we are saying that we are yet to reach an enterprise grade setup, and the moment we talk about the enterprise grade setup, that will lead to massive cost. So, essentially we are talking about a scenario that which does not require enterprise grade setup. If it required, then the cost calculation will be very different, and will be massive cost that one will incur in case of enterprise grade setup. So, just before that just before enterprise grade setup, if we are able to if we are looking for a top tier cloud setup and we want to have let us say 5 million views, right. So, considering that we are going forward. So, for 5 million page views, let us do a cloud vendor breakdown. So, first we consider compute, right. So, for in terms of compute, you might need actually 2-3 VMs, right. So, 2-3 VMs you might be needing. So, what are the options the same cloud providers, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. So, the numbers are basically US dollar USD numbers, and right. So, again these numbers I fetched retrieved through generative AI apps. So, there might be certain approximations here, right. So, AWS we look at 75 USD for their T3 dot medium cluster, right. If we look at Azure, then 85 USD for B2 MS cluster that they have, and Google Cloud for 70 approximately 70 USD for E2 medium cluster. So, you can take virtual instances from these clusters, name of the clusters are mentioned here. So, from these clusters you can take 2-3 instances from AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud for your 5 million page views, right. So, 5M is 5 million page views. So, essentially if you look at this, so Google Cloud is the lowest, and Azure is the highest, and AWS sits in between, right. So that's how you can see. So in terms of computing, Microsoft Azure is more costly computing, because Microsoft, why it is more costly, because they also achieve more lock-in, right, through their enterprise software. So many applications of Microsoft, whether it's about Office or many other applications, so people would be using that, enterprises would be using that, and therefore there is a lock-in that they might be tempted to go for Azure's cloud, and therefore that might be one reason that they are able to extract a higher price for compute, same level of compute, 2 to 3 VMs we are talking, right. And Google is more messy, in that sense. So essentially that is lowest. Now moving on, if we look at the data transfer, and the number that we have is 10 TB, because we are assuming for 5 million page views, right. So considering 5 million page views and 10 TB of data transfer, that might be needed. AWS, one might incur about approximately 850 USD, and these numbers that we talked about, all these are we are considering per month. So all this is the 5 million page scenario, this per month. So essentially 2-3 VMs per month, these numbers we are showing, right. So it is 70 USD per month for 2-3 VMs from Google Cloud, right. Then data transfer, again we come back to AWS. So standard egress essentially the data that the transfer that essentially is being talked about. So about 850 USD. In case of Azure 820, and in case of Google Cloud it might be in some range, there might be some variation in terms of what they offer. So from 800 to 1100 kind of USD, in that range the costing might go for. So if we take the lower number, then again Google becomes the lowest, and now Amazon becomes the costliest. If you are looking to do data transfer, then AWS seem to be, if we just take the lowest number, right, and that means the entry offering whatever plan that we are taking. So Amazon AWS seems to be more costly for data transfer, right. So if there are you move from 1 million page views to 2 million page views and 3 and 4 and 5, then and there are lots of data transfer, because people will be downloading your pages, so that cost will go up in case of Amazon, right. Moving on, now we look at the another factor, that is content delivery network, that is CDN caching, right. So in case of CDN, which facilitates caching and therefore it speeds up the performance for your website at the user end, right. So if we look at that, AWS is offering CloudFront, that is their CDN, and essentially per month cost would be approximately 80 USD. And if we look at Azure CDN, then per month cost is about 75 USD, and Google Cloud we have 60. So again Google's cloud CDN is lowest, and then we have after that Azure is sitting in between, and the costliest is AWS. So you can see AWS costly CDN, costly data transfer, it was sitting in between for compute, right. So and Google is lowest in all three category, which take the lowest numbers in the range also. So whether it is about data transfer or compute or CDN, in all cases Google's is cheaper, right, but still Amazon remains the main, right. It's costly, but maybe it is perceived better in terms of for most organizations, right, what the kind of need that they might be having in terms of their app or websites, right. Despite the cost, right, these three factors till now we consider, still Amazon is the market leader. Now we look at the other factors, for example managed DB, that is managed database. So we compare the managed database and we look at AWS, and let's say you go for relational database, and so that is approximately 40 USD in case of Amazon AWS, and if you look at Azure SQL database, so that is also relational, so that is about 50 USD. So you can see in case of Azure, this is costlier than AWS for database, and Google Cloud is sitting in between, 45, approximately 45 USD, that is Cloud SQL, so that also is a relational database. So in case of database, Amazon is lower. So if you want to keep lots of data in cloud, right, but there is not much data transfer, you are just keeping data there, then Amazon's database DB is lower, and Google is sitting in between, and Azure becomes costlier. So keeping data on Azure is costlier, right? And if we go back to data transfer also, so for data transfer it was sitting in a way in between, Azure was sitting in between, Google Cloud was lower. So if your organization is looking to have lots of looking to host lots of data, looking to keep lots of data on cloud, then maybe Amazon's offering might be more less costlier in comparison to Azure, which is much more, and then Google is in between these two providers, right? So if we look at the total thing, just based on these 4 factors, which is database, then CDN, that is caching to speed up the page loading and page downloading and loading at the end user side, and then data transfer and compute. So we look at these 4 factors and add all those numbers, then overall you see that Google is range number, but if we take the lower one, then it is the lowest, and Azure is sitting in between, and then AWS is the costlier, right? But obviously it depends on the organization's use case. If somebody is looking to store lots of data, then overall calculation might change, right, given the database need. If someone is expecting lots of data transfer, then in that case maybe Google's might be better. And if someone is looking for more in between, right, or maybe Microsoft is mainly for enterprise integration, so therefore if someone is in between, then maybe they can go for Azure for these for the simple calculation of 5 million page views, right. So this is about these 3, right. Now if we compare this cloud versus on-prem, right, so whether you would like to go for on-prem or you'd like to go for cloud, if we do that comparison, then let's see some of these numbers here. So how much does it cost per month to run a website? So essentially we are talking about on-prem. That means you would like to own your data center, you would like to have your computing on-prem, right. So on-prem breakdown let's do, and for the same thing 5 million page views. So IT staffing, that is additional, right. So every month let's say approximately 1200 to 2500 USD, that is staffing that you'll have to pay for. Now this number itself is higher than what we just mentioned here, right. So only to keep a staff you will end up paying more. So essentially from one first factor itself, we can clearly see that on-prem is way costlier if you want to run your own website. Obviously you can control more more things, right. And so this is per month, so this every month you'll have to pay. Internet you'll have to have lease line for that, because cloud vendor were earlier covering for the this also, right, this much, about 150 USD to 400 USD. So that might be cost to support that 5 million page views, right, depending on the kind of data transfer that might be happening. And electricity and cooling, that might be around 100 USD to 300 USD per month. And then we look at the hardware maintenance, that might be 50 USD to 200 USD approximately. So if we look at the total figure, combining all these, whether it's about the IT staffing, or whether it's about the internet or electricity and cooling, and then hardware maintenance, so all 4 factors combined, we can see that it's about 1500 USD to 3400 USD, right. So this is per month that you need to pay, right. So that would be cost. Then this is just the variable in the sense per month, but the server and compute we did not talk about, so you'll have to buy that. So there would be upfront cost that will be incurred, right, in case of on-prem, right. But obviously the servers and the storage, all that will have a longer life, and therefore you can divide that across years, but this is something you will incur per month, right. So simply comparing this itself with the cloud, so decision is quite clear. So if for your website or app, if there is no other strategic or other issue with your application or website, then it might be cloud might be the more economical options, and that is why more and more companies they are going for cloud, and why the cloud vendors, cloud providers are having so much of business, right. And then why the cloud data centers, their numbers are going up and all that. So that clarifies. And then if we look at the upfront cost that we did not talk about. So on-prem breakdown, there is upfront cost. So hardware cluster you like to have for 5 million page views. Let's say you would like to have earlier we talked about 2-3 VMs. Now we are talking about 2-3 rack servers, right, because you would like to do load balancing in case of 5 million page views, you might need that, and redundancy also. So that itself the upfront cost might be 5,000 USD to 15,000 USD, depending on the kind of server that you are going for, right, and all that. So what are the kind of rack server? You might go for Dell PowerEdge R630 or HP ProLiant, right. So you'll have to look for you'll have to solve for servers and 2-3 rack servers to be able to support 5 million page views, right. So that upfront cost is so high, So this was the per month cost 1500 USD. If we take the lower number, then also it is 1500 USD. So that itself was higher, but then the upfront cost, right. And then once the server's life is over, then again you will have to buy it again, buy a new server, right. So that is also there. So if we look at the other factor, that is networking and UPS. So there would be upfront costs associated with that, because now as an organization you will have to manage your own networking, you will have to manage your own backup in terms of power. So UPS, so high speed switches, so that would be one component. Firewalls, right, hardware firewalls, and then the robust UPS system, so that your system is on all the time, so that power backup has to be there, right, to prevent downtime. So this will also cost about 2,000 USD to 5,000 USD approximately. So you can combine this. So upfront cost is also quite huge. So on-prem is obviously a costly affair, right. So if a company should have good reasons to go for that, right. So obviously tech firms, they would like to, there's tech firms which are into software development, and so they obviously will go for on-prem for their own, because their product are also related to IT software product or any other services on top of software. So for their services or software products, they might go for on-prem, because their competitors are all other tech firms including cloud firms which are into a number of businesses. For other non-tech firms, cloud might be an economical option. Then what could be the other factors? Redundancy, right. So if we look at 1 million views, then one server might suffice. So already for 5 million case that we are considering, so at least 2 servers, could be 2 to 3 servers already talked about. So at 5 million we need a load balancer and at least 2 servers to prevent downtime, right. So as we move from 1 million to more, the kind of setup that we need, and that is why this one server setup is low tier cloud setup, and this 2 to 3 server that becomes top tier, because load balancer and downtime, right, that is supported. So you can also clearly see when we say top tier setup, in this case on-prem, or whether a low tier setup with just one server, But with just one server we cannot do load balancing in case of some spikes in views, and downtime also. If something happens to that one server, then downtime also we might not be able to manage, right. So how this movement happens from 1 million views to 5 million views, so that one can see. Then we can look at the bandwidth tax, right. So top cloud firms they actually charge much more if you are consuming lots of bandwidth, right. And so AWS, GCP, Azure data transfer cost for 10 TB is nearly 10x the cost of actual servers, right. So if there is a lot more data transfer that is likely to happen, then you might be better off with the on-prem, right. Just like we talked about, among these top cloud providers, which scenario, which cloud provider is more preferable. Similarly, we talk about the cloud versus on-prem. Then if there is a lot more data transfer, then you might end up paying much more in cloud because of the cost, right. So 10 times approximately for 10 TB data transfer, nearly 10 times more cost would be there, right. So we need to do that whole financial analysis. So just looking at the rate per month, that might not suffice. So actual transfer will also play a role. So actual financial analysis, trade off, that cost benefit analysis, that would be required. Moving on, then because the data transfer is an important element here, right. So companies are looking to minimize that, and some companies have come up with technology solutions to minimize this huge data transfer, which is a big cost component in running a website. Cloudflare is a company which is running its bandwidth alliance, and it is providing the technology to reduce this cost because of the data transfer. So they are using edge computing or edge computing solutions to reduce the cost for running websites. So what Cloudflare is doing, Cloudflare partners with cloud providers Azure, GCP, that is Google, and Oracle and many others, to favor or heavily discount data transfer fees for shared customers. So if somebody is going for Cloudflare solution and they have taken cloud from their alliance, Azure, Google, Oracle, or any other company which is part of the Cloudflare's bandwidth alliance, then they will waive off or heavily discount the data transfer fees, right, for shared customers. Essentially they are trying to promote their solution. So essentially, but for startups, for small firms, they can take advantage of while this is still there, right. So startups and small firms, they can go for Cloudflare solution. So essentially then a company can plan a bypass strategy where they can opt AWS or GCP for servers for their computing, but for traffic, for data transfer, they can route all traffic through Cloudflare, right. So that is how the Cloudflare and these cloud provider, they become the alliance, right. So they become a shared customer, right. So taking the traffic data transfer and the traffic part from you are managing through Cloudflare solution, but you are taking computing servers and other things from cloud provider, then that is how that you can combine that, and then you might be able to reduce your cost because Cloudflare will be waiving off your data transfer fees, right. So that is one way to it might obviously might be temporary, but this is one thing that is ongoing. Then what this Cloudflare firm is actually doing, so what is the gap that it is filling? So Cloudflare offers cloud security and reliability services using its internet infrastructure. So they provide the security in terms, many websites, they get lots of cyber attacks and all those things, and then the customers might not be experiencing good performance in terms of page loads and when they interact with a particular website. So Cloudflare solutions will improve that performance at the end user side through their internet infrastructure, right. So what are their key offerings? So actually it is a CDN, right. CDN we have already talked about. So all Amazon and Google and Microsoft, they have their own CDN as part of cloud offerings that we already discussed. Now in case of Cloudflare, if you go for the Cloudflare CDN global CDN solution, then there are discounts, right. So that will reduce the cost while these discounts are lasting. So global content delivery network for content caching at the edge, right. So this applies to other CDNs also, the Amazon and Google and Microsoft. So they in those CDNs also the content caching at the edge will happen, and therefore performance for the end user will improve, because the request might not go to the cloud server or might be serviced at the edge itself, and therefore faster performance would be experienced by the end user when they are trying to load a particular website. Then what are other support that they are providing? DDoS mitigation, because they are sitting in between, they are sitting at the edge and running the CDN. So therefore if there is any cyber attack, then they can filter that also. So DDoS is one category of cyber attack, distributed denial of service. So one category of cyber attack. So that mitigation of that kind of attack is also addressed by Cloudflare's CDN. Then you also get web application firewall. So that will also protect the service from the cyber attacks. And there are DNS services and zero trust security. So all this is combined in Cloudflare's offering, and then serverless computing is there, right. So essentially Cloudflare is offering an edge computing solutions for their content delivery network. So then what is edge computing? So edge computing is a distributed architecture to process client data at the network. So instead of client data being processed at the VM, right, cloud's VM or on-prem server, right. Idea is to introduce distributed computing in that whole process, and distributed architecture here will process the client data at the network itself, so that some time would be saved while the data packets reach the server and the processing happens. So edge computing would be sitting in between, right. So a distributed architecture to process client data at the network periphery as close to the originating source as possible. So wherever the data is coming from, there might be some edge device, edge gateway, edge server nearby to the originating source. So process the data there itself, so it does not reach the centralized cloud, it gets processed at the edge itself, and therefore as an end result the end user will perceive a better performance, right. So what it does, minimizes latency. So when you are trying to load a website, the website will load quicker because the page download is not coming directly from the cloud server, it is coming from the edge, and therefore it minimizes or reduces the latency, right. So reduces bandwidth cost also, because you did not really do the data transfer with the cloud. Because of that, the data transfer cost will also reduce, and that is how the Cloudflare, through their solution, they might give discounts. Obviously they are trying to promote their solution, and improves response time. So response time improves, latency minimizes, all these connected things, right, that will happen. So edge computing is with addressing this gap. Now what could be the originating sources? IoT devices, right, sensors, industrial machines, right. IoT devices, sensors and industrial machines, they might be generating lots of data, and so processing of that data can happen at the edge instead of cloud. So when the processing will happen at the edge, it is more of a distributed computing taking place instead of processing happening at the cloud, and therefore more centralized computing taking place. Now there can be passive source. So there might be certain devices which will only collect data and send it to nearby edge gateway or edge server. So the edge server or edge gateway will do the processing, and the data might be coming from the passive source, right. Then there can be edge devices which are generating data, but they also have computing power, and therefore they can use that computing power to process collected data, right. So, for example, autonomous vehicles, wearables. So, these are examples where autonomous vehicles, they will have the computing power on board, and they can process the data being generated through the sensors there, because it is very important that the car is the vehicle or the car, autonomous car, it is able to respond to the situation in a quick manner, instant manner. So, therefore, onboard computing should be there. So, whatever data is being collected, it should be processed there itself, right. So, autonomous vehicles, wearables are examples of that, right. So, this is about the edge computing, and overall it becomes part of your cost per month calculation to run a website, right, because you have take the Cloudflare solution, which is an edge computing solution, then you might be able to reduce your cost, right. But obviously full-fledged financial analysis would be needed considering all these factors. So, we stop here and we will continue our discussion in the next session. Thank you.